You're standing in the center of a crowded room, and everyone is smiling at you. They nod approvingly, compliment your manners, your humility, your kindness. You are the good one, the agreeable one, the one who always says yes, the one who smooths the chaos, even if it means swallowing your voice. And yet, deep down, something screams, not in rebellion, in grief, because somewhere beneath that polished persona, behind every smile you gave when you wanted to scream, every apology you offered just to keep the peace, and every sacrifice you made hoping someone would finally notice your worth, there's a ghost. And that ghost is you. When did you vanish? And who is living your life in your place? You were taught that being good, being nice, was the highest virtue, that to accommodate others, to defer, to be pleasant and palatable was to win affection, belonging, safety. But what if that very goodness has become a prison? What if your kindness is killing something sacred within you? You look around and realize you've curated a version of yourself so agreeable, so digestible, that not a single soul in this room actually knows you. They've fallen in love with your performance. An avatar stitched together by survival, not truth. You became a mirror for other people's comfort, and somewhere in the reflection, your own edges blurred to dust. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you said what you actually meant? When was the last time you let yourself be ugly, angry, needy, contradictory, human? Or have you been playing God in disguise, merciful, forgiving, endlessly generous, because you fear that be anything else would cost you love? Here's the paradox. You give your energy to others to prove your worth, but in doing so, you make yourself invisible. You avoid conflict to keep the peace, but silently declare war on your own soul. You want to be loved, so you erase yourself hoping others will notice what's no longer there. Is that not a form of spiritual suicide? You've learned to trade honesty for approval, rage for restraint, depth for diplomacy. You become fluent in emotional shape-shifting, morphing your tone, your truth, your body language to fit whatever will make others more comfortable. But the cost of that comfort? You, the real you, sits gagged in the basement of your own psyche, watching your life unfold like a movie they're not allowed to star in. And the tragedy? No one even notices you're missing, because you've smiled the entire time. And so here we are, a world full of kind people, burning quietly from the inside out. Do you know how many apologies have been uttered by people who weren't wrong? How many marriages, careers, and identities were built not from desire, but from obligation? How many times you've said yes just to be loved? And what if, just what if, the nice version of you isn't noble at all, but a sophisticated survival strategy born from fear? You've been told it's dangerous to be too much. You've been told anger makes you unlikable. You've been told to make others feel safe, even if you're drowning in that safety yourself. But is that true goodness? Or is it a betrayal we dress up as virtue? What if your silence isn't compassion, it's fear? What if your niceness is really self-abandonment in disguise? What if the world has mistaken your emotional servitude for sainthood? And worse, what if you have two? The terrifying truth is this. Most people don't realize they've lost themselves until the version they created collapses, until the performance exhausts them, until their body revolts, until the anxiety, the resentment, the chronic fatigue become too loud to ignore, until they wake up in a life that looks good on paper, but feels like a prison. So here's the question. What if being nice is the very thing keeping you from being whole? And if you dare to unravel that, if you trace the origins of your goodness, your people-pleasing, your spiritual restraint, you'll find something ancient, something inherited, something insidious. But we're not there yet. Before we learn to break free, we must first see the bars. Next, we descend into the origin of this hidden cost, the psychological chain behind niceness, and how you were trained to disappear. Shall we begin? There's something tragically elegant about the way it begins. It doesn't arrive as a scream, but a whisper, not in the chaos of abuse or the spectacle of rejection, but in the quiet spaces where approval is earned and affection becomes conditional. It begins the first time you're praised for being good instead of being real. Your childhood wasn't filled with betrayal, not overtly. No, you were taught to survive through smiles. Maybe you had parents who praised obedience, who beamed with pride when you were polite, silent, agreeable. Maybe you learned to read the emotional weather of the room before you even knew your own feelings. You adapted, not out of malice or manipulation, but out of instinct. And that's where the tragedy blooms. The mask didn't feel like a mask. It felt like love. This is where Carl Jung's shadow theory begins to whisper through the cracks. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And what's more absurd than spending your entire life becoming someone you're not, just to avoid rejection? In a world obsessed with virtue and image, nice becomes the ultimate disguise, one that's praised, rewarded, encouraged. But Jung reminds us, what we repress doesn't vanish. It festers. The anger you were told was unseemly, it curdles into resentment. The needs you buried, they return as anxiety. The voice you silenced, it echoes as chronic indecision. You think you're in control because you're kind. But the truth is, you've outsourced your sense of self to everyone else's approval. Enter Friedrich Nietzsche, who called this slave morality, the morality of the oppressed soul who cannot rebel outwardly, so they internalize their rage and call it goodness. And on the genealogy of morals, Nietzsche explores how the good person is often not truly good, but merely compliant, afraid of wrath, of conflict, of being alone. The nice person, by this view, is not enlightened. They are shackled by fear masquerading as empathy. Aldous Huxley warned of this in Brave New World, where society offers comfort, predictability, and stability in exchange for the loss of depth, desire, and the soul's raw edges. Sound familiar? You've been conditioned to smile through your suffering, to nod while being erased, to comply and call it peace. But at what cost? By the time you're a teenager, the mask has calcified. You don't even realize you're performing anymore. You're the peacemaker, the helper, the one who everyone goes to, but no one sees. And if you ever try to pull the mask off, even just for a breath, the guilt comes rushing like a tidal wave. You confuse discomfort with moral failure. Jean-Paul Sartre called this bad faith, a refusal to take responsibility for one's freedom. You pretend to be a waiter or a partner or a good citizen or saint, when really you're afraid of being, just being. So you lie to yourself and become the role, the mask. But the mask doesn't breathe. It just performs. Here lies the deeper philosophical root. Being nice is often an escape from the terrifying freedom of authenticity, because to be authentic is to be vulnerable, to risk being misunderstood, to lose love, to be exiled. So instead, you choose safety. You choose agreement over truth. You choose being liked over being real. And this doesn't just affect individuals. It infects entire cultures. We create social systems that reward compliance and punish confrontation. Schools punish disruption. Workplaces reward agreeableness. Families cling to politeness like it's morality. Emotional suppression becomes a kind of virtue, a golden cage wrapped in smiles. And let's not forget Arthur Schopenhauer, who claimed that desire is suffering, that to want, to crave, to express unfiltered humanity is a form of existential agony. But what if our suffering isn't desire itself, but a denial of desire in favor of societal decorum? This is where Viktor Frankl enters with hope. In Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl suggests that suffering becomes unbearable when it is meaningless. And what could be more meaningless than a life lived entirely to meet expectations that aren't even yours? You see, this niceness isn't benign. It's a metaphysical erasure. It silences the rebel within you, the one who might shout no in a world obsessed with yes. It buries your rage, your lust, your wildness under layers of agreeable smiles. And in doing so, it murders your authenticity one polite gesture at a time. And still, we reward this. We admire people who sacrifice. We call people mature when they suppress their needs. We call them strong when they suffer silently. We call them respectful when they never push back. And yet, we wonder why they feel so hollow. Now imagine this multiplied by millions. A world of people who no longer know what they want, who cannot feel their own anger, who apologize before speaking, who think that their worth is measured by their utility to others. And we wonder why everyone's anxious, why depression thrives in the well-mannered, why the kindest people often carry the deepest sorrow. Could be that we created a world where the most lovable people are those who are slowly disappearing. The real problem is not niceness. It's the suppression of truth beneath the veil of it. It's the weaponization of kindness against the self. It's the belief that to be loved, you must be less. But here's the thing. The cost is rising, quietly, in the background, and the toll it takes on your body, your relationships, your creativity. It's almost invisible until it isn't. And when the collapse comes, it doesn't look like drama. It looks like numbness, like burnout, like waking up next to someone you built a life with and realizing they've never truly met you. It looks like going through the motions, like perfectionism, like saying, I'm fine, when you're not even sure what you feel anymore. So before we heal, we must see. Before we escape, we must admit we're trapped. And in the next chapter, we'll look at the cost, the unseen consequences his role has carved into your nervous system, your relationships, your soul. But for now, hold this question close. If you've always been the nice one, then who has been living your life? There's a peculiar silence that follows decades of being nice. Not peace, not clarity, but a dense, humming silence. The kind that wraps itself around your chest in the middle of the night. You lie awake, wondering why you feel like a ghost in your own story, why your joy feels secondhand, why your voice, even when you speak, doesn't seem to echo anywhere real. Because here's the truth most people don't talk about. The performance of niceness rewires you, not metaphorically, literally, neurologically. Every time you suppress anger to avoid conflict, your brain learns that honesty is unsafe. Every time you smile while swallowing pain, your nervous system adjusts its stress response to favor disconnection over authenticity. The amygdala, the seat of your fear, fires not at danger, but at truth. And over time, the fear of being real becomes a baseline condition. You don't just act nice. You become afraid of being anything else. This is how the mask becomes fused with the face. It's not a behavior anymore, it's an identity. And that's where the deepest consequence lives. You stop knowing where you end and others begin. Let's talk trauma, not as drama, but as fracture. Being nice in a world that rewards compliance over connection often stems from early relational trauma. That doesn't mean abuse necessarily. Trauma, at its core, is anything that overwhelms your ability to be fully yourself in the presence of another. So what happens when your truth was too much for your parents? Your sadness unwelcome? Your anger punished? You split. You became who they needed you to be in order to stay safe, loved, included. And the most dangerous thing? It worked. So you kept doing it. And by the time you reached adulthood, you wasn't a self. It was a composite of strategies. A psychological sculpture shaped by what they wanted, not what you are. Let's bring in cognitive bias here. Ever heard of confirmation bias? It's your brain's tendency to interpret new information in a way that confirms what it already believes. If you've been conditioned to believe that your worth depends on being liked, then you'll unconsciously seek out relationships and environments that demand your niceness. And when people only love you for the mask, you'll take that as proof that the mask is all that's lovable. It's a closed loop, and breaking it feels like death. Because for most people, authenticity doesn't just feel risky. It feels like annihilation. Why? Because niceness, in its weaponized form, functions like a false identity, a substitute soul. You've been trading integrity for acceptance, and it's not free. Let's look at how the cost manifests. Emotionally, you become a container for everyone else's needs, but no one knows what yours are, including you. Relationally, you attract people who benefit from your silence. You find yourself in imbalanced dynamics where your value is your utility, not your essence. Somatically, the body begins to scream what the mouth cannot. Chronic fatigue, migraines, gut issues. The trauma of self-abandonment becomes inflammation. Spiritually, you feel hollow, unanchored, like you've built a temple to someone else's god and forgot your own name. There's a reason many of the nicest people are also the most anxious. Anxiety, in many cases, is simply authenticity trying to escape the prison of your performance. Think about that. And it doesn't stop at the individual. The cult of niceness seeps into culture. Workplaces hire for culture fit, which often means, will this person comply? Social media rewards an offensiveness, turning human beings into brands. Religion glorifies self-sacrifice to such a degree that martyrdom becomes mistaken for virtue. Romantic relationships devolve into caretaking arrangements where one partner gives and the other consumes, both calling it love. And all along, society whispers, "You're doing great. You're so strong, so helpful, so good." Meanwhile, your inner world is rotting because niceness is brittle. It's a performance under pressure. And the more you fake stability, the more you fracture. And when it finally breaks, you might call it burnout, or depression, or a midlife crisis, or a spiritual awakening. But what it really is grief. Grief for the self you never got to be. Grief for the years spent as a mirror. Grief for every yes that should have been no. Grief for the silence you mistook for safety. Grief for the love you received only when you performed. It hits you in the quiet moments. When you say, "I'm fine," and feel the lie catch in your throat. When someone thanks you for your kindness and it makes you want to cry. When you realize you're terrified of being disliked, not because you're weak, but because you've never experienced love without performance. This is the cost no one sees. Because on the surface, you're the best employee, the most dependable friend, the kindest partner. But beneath it all, you're disappearing. And here's the cruelest twist. The more invisible you become, the more praise you receive. Until one day, the illusion breaks. Maybe someone crosses a line so deep that even your politeness can't cover it. Maybe your body collapses. Maybe you wake up and realize you don't want to live this way anymore. That's the moment we've been heading toward. The reckoning, the rupture, the invitation. Because the truth is, your rage is sacred. Your sorrow is intelligent. Your discomfort is a compass. And your no might just be the first honest prayer you've ever spoken. But first, you must face the wreckage of your own niceness. Not with shame, but with awe. You were trying to survive. You did what you had to do. You made yourself small to stay safe. But now, it's time to unmake the performance. Because the cost of being nice is too high when what it buys is your erasure. Next, we begin the rebellion. Not a war against others, but a reclamation of your own soul. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be real. It doesn't begin with rage. It begins with a whisper, a twitch, a pulse. Something stirs in you when you least expect it. In the middle of a conversation where you would normally nod and agree. In the moment you reach for your phone to say, "Yes, I'd love to." In the silence after an apology you didn't mean. A pulse of defiance. Not loud, not theatrical, but ancient. A wordless urge in the marrow of your bones. No more. This is the moment the rebellion begins, not with violence, but with remembering. Because here's the paradox. You don't have to become someone new. You have to unbecome the one you were never meant to be. Let's start with the truth. You were trained to be nice. That's good news. Because what is learned can be unlearned. You weren't born agreeable. You were born authentic, with a wildness in your spirit and a hunger to be seen. You cried when you were hungry. You screamed when you were hurt. You didn't care if it was convenient. You weren't cruel, but you were true. And then the world taught you that truth was dangerous. So now, the rebellion isn't about becoming less kind. It's about becoming more whole. And that requires fire. It requires reclaiming everything you've disowned. The anger, the grief, the desire, the selfishness. Because the truth is, you cannot be fully kind unless you are also fully sovereign. Otherwise, your kindness is just people-pleasing in costume. So what does rebellion look like? It starts with radical honesty, not public protest, not confrontation, but the private decision to tell the truth, first to yourself. I don't want to go to this dinner. I feel resentment when I do all the work. I said yes, but I meant no. I am tired of being what everyone else needs. Write it down. Speak it out loud. Say it in the mirror. Whatever it takes to stop gaslighting yourself. You cannot liberate a self you keep denying exists. Next, stop apologizing for your boundaries. You will want to. You'll feel guilt. Your hands may shake. But guilt is not a moral compass. Guilt is often a withdrawal symptom from the addiction of approval. Let the guilt come. Let it burn through you. It means you're doing something revolutionary. Refuse to explain yourself to people who benefit from your silence. Let them squirm. Let them wonder. You owe no thesis on your becoming. This is where people fall off the path. They think rebellion means yelling, proving, teaching. But true rebellion is rooted, quiet, unmovable. It doesn't need applause or understanding. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is say nothing and still not bend. Let's call on those who've walked this path before. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But he also warned, that privilege comes with a cost. The shadow must be integrated. Your rage must be honored. Your boundaries must be drawn in stone. Viktor Frankl believed in meaning above all else. But he never said meaning was comfortable. Sometimes, meaning is found in the very choice to disappoint someone else in order to not abandon yourself, Nietzsche wrote. He was a why can bear almost any how. Your why must be rooted in freedom, not performance. Otherwise, the mask will always feel safe in your face. But perhaps most radical of all is the choice to stop performing love and start receiving it. This is terrifying, because love, real love, can't attach to your mask. It must see you, ugly, angry, soft, scared, opinionated, imperfect, and stay anyway. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine being fully seen and not having to earn it? That's the reward of rebellion. Not applause, not victory, but existence. You get to have a life again, a voice, a spine, a soul. You begin to laugh, not politely, but wildly. You cry, not behind closed doors, but in the sun. You say no, not cruelly, but clearly. You hold your truth like a sword, but also like a song. And something strange happens. The people who only love the mask begin to disappear. But those who remain, they see you. And for the first time, so do you. This is not about being rude. It's about being real. Not about rejecting kindness, but about rejecting the lie that kindness requires your disappearance. This is a path of integrity, where your insides and your outsides match. It's slow at first, lonely. You might grieve the mask. You might miss the praise. You might wonder if you're doing it wrong. But here's how you'll know you're on the right path. You stop explaining your choices. You stop fearing silence. You start feeling your feet on the ground, your voice in your throat, your soul in your skin. And most of all, you begin to feel alive, not performative, not palatable, not presentable, alive. So yes, rebellion is hard. But what's harder is dying in plain sight. Here is your permission to stop earning your place. Here is your invitation to become your own home. Here is your first honest breath in a lifetime of holding it in. And what comes next? That's the final revelation. The truth behind all truths. The one that redefines everything you've been taught. It's not a lesson. It's a return. And once you see it, you'll never be the same. You don't remember the exact moment it happened. Maybe it was quiet. Maybe no one else noticed. But one day, after all the rebellions and boundaries and breathless, shaking nose, you looked in the mirror, and for the first time in years, you didn't see a stranger. Not a mask, not a persona, but you. And what shocked you wasn't the strength. It was the softness, not performative softness. The kind you use as armor, but real softness. The kind that can only exist when nothing needs to be protected anymore. Because the final truth is this. The version of you who was nice didn't need to be destroyed. They needed to be held. That child who first learned that kindness was the only way to feel safe, they weren't wrong. They were brilliant. They were adaptive. They were intuitive. They were wholly in their survival. They gave you a way to belong in a world that didn't know how to hold your fullness. They built the mask, not out of shame, but out of love. They wanted to keep you alive. And now here you are, no longer in survival, no longer chasing safety through performance, no longer trying to make yourself small enough to be held by others. Because now, you are the one who holds. You hold your anger without flinching. You hold your desire without apology. You hold your uncertainty without collapsing. You hold your truth, not as a weapon, but as a flame you tend with reverence. And in doing so, something sacred returns. Wholeness, not perfection, not enlightenment, but wholeness. The kind that knows light because it knows shadow. The kind that doesn't flinch at contradiction. The kind that understands that freedom doesn't mean never feeling fear again, but choosing to move with it anyway. This is the place where the paradoxes unravel. You discover that you can be kind without being compliant. You can be loving without abandoning yourself. You can be generous without being empty. You can be soft and strong. You can be compassionate and assertive. You can be tender and terrifying. Because the most powerful truth is this: being fully yourself is the kindest thing you can offer the world. All those years you thought niceness was love. But now you see, love is too big to fit inside a mask. Love requires presence. Love requires truth. Love requires courage. And courage isn't loud. It's not bold declarations or grand gestures. Courage is sitting in a room where everyone expects you to smile and letting your face stay still. Courage is telling the truth when your voice shakes. Courage is holding a boundary when your hands tremble. Courage is not performing even when applause is guaranteed. And the greatest courage? To love yourself enough to let others misunderstand you. To let go of the need to be seen as good. To let go of the performance of worth. To let go of nice and embrace something wilder, something real. So many people live their whole lives in a performance of goodness. They die with praise, with admiration, with legacy, but never with freedom. You came here for something else. You came here to remember, to reclaim, to return. And now you see, the rebellion wasn't the point. The rebellion was the bridge. To this sacred stillness, to this breath in your body, to this pulse in your veins, to this life that finally feels like yours. You've stopped earning your place. You've stopped explaining your heart. You've stopped offering yourself like a sacrament to the comfort of others. And now, when you stand in the center of a room, you do not perform. You radiate. You do not disappear. You do not apologize. You arrive, and those who only knew your mask will fall away. Let them, because in their absence, something new will come. Not just people, but possibilities. Possibilities that were never available to the version of you who only knew how to shrink. Possibilities that require your fullness, your edge, your fire, your no. This is a return of the sacred self, not the self society trained, not the self your trauma built, but the self that existed before the world told you who to be. And this self, they are not nice. They are not polite. They are not palatable. They are real. They are whole. They are free. And freedom, as it turns out, is not found in being loved by everyone. It is found in finally loving yourself enough to be seen as you are. So now the question isn't, will they still love me if I stop being nice? The question is, will you still choose to love yourself even if they don't? Because the only love that will ever set you free is a love that doesn't ask you to disappear in order to be held. You are here. You are whole. You are home. Welcome back.